Well, this is a first for us. A farmer, a pro golfer, a farmer again, and a land guy. Now that is a unique combination, right? Hi, I'm Dave Price. Our guest this week is Josh Manske. He grew up on a family farm in Iowa. He starred as a golfer in high school and then in college. In fact, he was an All-American. He later traveled the world as a professional golfer before an injury, and that cut short his career. Well, he's back in agriculture in several different ways. We're going to explore all kinds of things with Josh this week. Josh, welcome. We appreciate you joining us. How are you?
Dave, appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
There's some things I want to talk to you about, but we have to get to how you got to where you are. I will admit, you are the first professional golfer I have had on the podcast. We must begin with that.
Yeah, that's I would love to talk about that because, of course, in my life now, I have a whole section of people that are like, "Oh, you played professional golf," and I have a whole section of people that are like, only know me as golfer Josh. So that always makes it fun. But I grew up here in Algona, Iowa, north central part of the state, right in the prairie pothole region. And yeah, Dad got me started golfing when I was, I think, like 2 years old, and just kind of had a knack for it. I may or may not have taken out a couple of windows as a young person with my plastic golf clubs. Um, I can remember one time I hit a shot with my plastic club, and I do remember going right through one of the big windows in the house. That was kind of fun. But yeah, so that's what I focused on and what I wanted to do. But I always have had agriculture within my life. From my dad having a drainage business, grandpa had a drainage business before on my dad's side, and then of course on my mom's side, which is where I got the love for farming with my grandfather. So that's on the ag side. But back to the golf part, yeah, played golf in college, was a 3-time All-American golfer, and was good enough to be able to go on and play professionally, play all across the globe professionally, and then had a unfortunate career-ending injury, and that's how I ended up now doing stuff in the ag sector. So I do miss playing professionally. I've got still a lot of friends that I once in a while will see on TV, and wherever I'm at, I go, "God, that'd be kind of fun to be out there with them." So,
in how many countries have you played?
now, Dave, you're pegging me down here. I'd say at least a half a dozen, if not more.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's the coolest course you've ever played.
Coolest golf course. Probably God, Dave.
See, you're not prepped for all of this. You're not prepped for any of this.
I'm probably obligated. I had two of really the coolest experiences on top of getting to know just some of the coolest people. Was I played in the British Amateur at Royal Troon, and as an AM, and then that same summer I represented the United States of America and the World University Games in the Czech Republic. And I will tell you this much: there is nothing cooler than representing your country, having USA on your bag, and that is just one of the coolest things of all time. But so probably Royal Troon, in that environment of the British Amateur being one of the most prestigious amateur tournaments in the world, and on that golf course with the history in Scotland. That would probably be it. Turnberry would be a close second. Again, another course in Scotland. So yeah, those two for sure.
How many other guys from Algona, Iowa can say that?
Well, I'll tell you this much, Dave. We have got some unbelievable talent. So
all right,
we've got my cousin Alex Manske, who's a stud football player, and then of course you have the one and only Audie Crooks as well from Algona. So I'm just a little peon now compared to what's come up the ranks.
But as far as the golf side, State University basketball player, for all those who may not know.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Algona has a history of some really, really good golfers, my dad being one of them. I think he ranked second all time in senior wins in the state of Iowa. So the Manske crew has got some good genes for golf, amongst other sports now, of course, too. But I don't know if anybody can claim the fame of playing to some of those events that I have. So I'll take the mantle for that one. My little
And
claim to fame up here.
you go back, you're fifth generation, right?
We're
Fifth
fifth
generation
generation.
farm.
Yes. Yep. That goes on my mom's side. Yep. On my
Okay,
mom's side.
so as you were a kid, are you thinking about a couple of different things? Like, did you think I'm going to farm like all these generations had, or am I booking out of here because you reached a point where you're like, dang, I think I can be a pro golfer? Like, what were you thinking all that? What were you thinking?
I loved I've loved agriculture so much. You're gonna love this, Dave. So I have mom, of course, keeps certain things, and I would record. I don't know how many people know this. This is kind of this a me story. I recorded as like a 10-year-old kid the closing price for corn and soybeans as a 10-year-old. And I did that for as like through high school.
Hmm.
Like I would record what the price was. I would
Mm-hmm.
watch it on a daily basis. And of course, I got that from my grandfather, who, when I would go see grandpa up in Blue Earth, it was always what was the price of the market?
Like in a
What was
notebook or
corn
what? What
beans?
were you, how were you recording this?
Yeah, just on pen and paper. Yeah, like
Okay.
I've got next to me here. Yeah, just pen and
Uh-huh.
paper, pencil and paper, and just so that the agriculture's always been in my blood, of course. Like I said, on my mom's side, the farming is runs
Mm-hmm.
deep there. And then on my dad's side, it does too. Grandpa was a dairy farmer up in Blue Earth, and then got out of dairy farming, and then bought the drainage business down here in Algona, which is why the Manskes live in Algona now. That would have been in 1969. So growing up around farmers, and of course, my one of my favorite human beings on the planet, was a farmer for what grandpa probably for 80 years. I mean, grandpa farmed with it, David. Grandpa farmed with a team of horses. Think about
Wow.
that for a second. He farmed with a team of horses, and then we went to the Farm Progress show together in 2016. And I was wheeling him on it wasn't like a wheelchair, but it was essentially like a wheelchair. And we were
Mm-hmm.
wheeled up to this tractor, and we both looked at it. And grandpa looks back at me and goes, "I know what that is. That's an autonomous tractor. Doesn't have a cab." So I just think of his lifetime of farming, where he farmed with a team of horses when he was a young kid, all the way through the technological advances, hybrid seed, all of that. And then to come at that point, and that's over 10 years ago now, to an autonomous tractor. And I think back to that moment often, because I'm like, what does that look like for us now going forward here?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Uh, yeah. Not to get out in front of us here, but there are certain moments you have in life. Like I remember that was like it was yesterday. I'm like, this is kind of like a full circle moment for grandpa
Yeah.
here. Like the technology, what does that look like for us? I mean, flying vehicles. I mean, that would be almost equivalent, would it not?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. All right, so you have this injury in golf, and you're like, at some point you have to come to terms with, I think it's done. I can't do this
Yeah,
anymore.
death by a thousand cuts in a way.
Yeah. Um, so then how did you segue back into ag?
So you got injured, and then you're kind of like you're doing all the things you can to try to get back, and you're
Yeah.
just like I said, death by a thousand cuts. Like it's not getting better. It's not getting
Hmm.
better, and like still not getting better. So then what are you going to do? And it's like, what do you need to do for a job now? And so I had gotten my insurance licenses and was like trying to do some of that stuff. And then, an opportunity came up. It's like, well, hey, got an opportunity to come back within the farming operation. And, I'm like, well, I've always loved ag. Even when I was playing professional golf, it was, I mean, how much nerdiness do I want to divulge to the
Confess.
public here, Dave? I mean, I remember taking Iowa Farmer Today magazine's paper edition overseas with me, if that tells you anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that was how I always had that on my mind. So, because when I'd come back home, I'd go up and see Grandpa, and Gramps and I would sit there and read, "Hey, what's going on? What's happening? Are we getting the rains? Are we not?
Hmm.
What did you plant? Go out." And I mean, I remember too, as a young person, Grandpa and I going out and scouting fields, that kind of stuff. So always within my blood. But so the opportunity presented itself. Kind of a person of rural America too. Love my small town that I grew up in, and the opportunity to be able to come back. and live here, and then kind of piecemeal together a bunch of different things, not only just being able to do some stuff on the farm side, but manage farmland, sell farm real estate, and get involved with the family drainage business. In a way, it's kind of a little microcosm of people trying to figure out how to make it if they want to live in their small town,
Hmm.
right? It's kind of like, okay, how can I make the income I'd like to make while doing the things that I like to do or love to do? And it's like it takes a lot of that in order to make it work. So it's like I tell people I wear a lot of hats. That is the God's honest truth.
Which it seems like that seems so common across the board, doesn't it? That if you're committed to staying where you are, you have to be resourceful like that.
Very much so. And my friends will tell you as well, like I've got a little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit. So it's like starting new things and
Hmm.
going out and doing those kind of things that's within me in my blood a little bit too. And so I enjoy the challenge of doing some of those things, but the challenge nonetheless. I mean, there are days where it's like
Yeah,
the list just continues to get longer and longer, and you get to about this point in the day, you're like, my goodness, I didn't accomplish half of what I wanted to try to accomplish just because you had stuff coming at you.
for
So
sure. So what are you watching right now? What's got your attention?
bunch of things, Dave. Like from a policy side of things, it's kind of interesting. I guess we can start maybe a little bit local. It's for all those that don't know, I do sell farmland as well. So for part of one of the things I do. But
Hmm.
like from a policy standpoint, I think it's interesting. There's a right to repair legislation that's making its way through the Iowa House and possibly the
Hmm.
Iowa Senate.
Hmm.
Kind of an interesting thing I didn't think I would necessarily see in Iowa. I didn't think we'd be at the tip of the spear of that. That's kind of interesting. I'd really like to see Congress get a 5-year farm bill, like the whole thing, instead of the piecemeal that they have done. That'd bring a little bit of stability. And the input side of things with fertilizer, which it was already interesting before the war was launched in Iran, and now it's really become interesting. That's another thing. And of course, trade. That's been on our minds it seems like that's been on all of our minds for multiple years now.
For sure.
So those are just a couple. On the farmland side of things, it's been interesting. You would think with as weak as the farm economy is, that you would start to see land softening, and you just are not seeing that. And the best thing that I can make up that from what I'm seeing, and I think it's been spelled out in some of the data, has been just lack of inventory, lack of farmland for sale has been what's keeping the price of. I mean, you can find deals. It's like anything. It's like, oh,
Sure.
well, this piece sold for, $6,700. Like, well, yeah, it did. But look at the area. And then, of course, you look at Northwest Iowa. That can always be an outlier as well.
Yeah,
But you see, $16,000, $17,000 an acre land, if not more,
if not more. Yeah.
right? If not more. So that's been a really interesting part of this whole thing where you just have had that land really stay stable, shockingly. I mean, like
And
I said
yeah, that's
last
what I was
year,
going to
just
ask you. Has that surprised you at all? Because you've done
shocking.
this long enough now that with all the pressures that so many of these family farms have on them, that's what's amazed me as an outsider, just really getting into this the last couple of years, that just that burden that's on people so much day after day after day after day, and this is 3 straight years for a lot
Yes,
of people that have just kicked people in the teeth, and the resilience and determination to not throw in the towel if you can at all help it, it's just is amazing to me.
amazing. I'm with you. I 100% with you. If there was ever, I mean, you're too big. I mean, there's a bunch of different levers that are being pulled with land prices, but the two big ones, as you know, Dave, are commodity prices and interest rates. Thus, and of course, you had a couple of other things when you had the big run up in 21, 22, and 23. But look, that was a perfect storm. High commodity prices, low interest rates, right? Two
Mhm.
levers.
Yeah.
Boom, there you go. So now the levers are, interest rates, you can sit there and make the argument that, well, historically
Yeah.
they're not that bad compared to what we've had here. But the commodity prices, and especially on the input side of things, I think that's worth noting. Like you've had the pressure of input prices being elevated, And then the trade disputes that you've been having puts pressure on what you're selling it for. Now, we have had a run up in soybeans here the last couple of months here.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I say but because how many people have been able to capture that? A lot of guys sold out of the field last fall. Some sold after the first of the year for cash flow reasons. If you were able to carry that, then you've been able to capture that premium. I don't know how many people have been able to do that. That's been part of the problem, right? So you're like, oh, beans are over $12 now. It's like, yeah, well, that's great unless you don't have beans to sell, and that means nothing to you.
Yeah. You mentioned fertilizers. That was one thing that, however long this has been now, 3, 4 years, whenever Russia attacked Ukraine, we talked about that a lot. And now with this situation, the war with Iran, we're seeing that initial spike, and it's going to depend, probably depending on where folks are listening to this conversation right now, about whether there's immediate pain or if it's something in the back of your mind as you're looking down the road when it's time to buy.
Great point. Like I said, fertilizer was already an issue when it came to the price of it. And now, for us, and I think a lot of producers in Iowa, I'd probably not all, but a decent amount, we put our stuff down last fall. So it's already on the ground and it's already paid for. There's certain parts of the country that, they'll put urea on and other products in the spring. So they're probably caught in this problem of the Strait of Hormuz, and are we going to be able to get the product? What's the cost of the product going to be? I tell you, Dave, what I'm really concerned about is not necessarily right now, at least for our operation and a lot of operations in Iowa. I'm looking down the road here when we book fertilizer in August, September, application in the fall. What that looks like for us going into the 2027 growing season. So if you think about it, August, September, that's not that far away. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. And, and everybody at farms out there, you all know it's the difficulty of you're dealing with 3 crops in any given time, last year's, this year's, and the following. So it's nice to have some stability where you can get it. So you have these, trade disputes. Is it on? Is it off? And now everything was complicated before. Now you've thrown something in the mix of, a lot of that fertilizer, especially like urea, natural gas, makes its way through. Of course, natural gas being something with anhydrous that needs to be made with anhydrous ammonia, comes through the Strait of Hormuz, right? So now that all of a sudden complicates that big time. So I'm looking, immediately, there's going to be growers that are really pinched with this. They've probably had price increases, through the roof recently here. But what does that look like for us come when we're trying to plan for the 27 crop? And I know people are probably listening, going, oh, you're thinking that far ahead already? Yes. Yeah, we're thinking that far ahead already.
I've got one of my best friends. We've got a running joke that we have pretty similar personalities. Our wives would probably say it's also a character flaw, but you sort of take your emotions and feelings and just bury them all down. And of course, it never works like that, because then at some inopportune moment, everything's just going to come spewing out. But man, if you're the psyche that gets strained through this whole ups and downs of the trade war, trade policies, tariff policies, all those things, you can be super, super optimistic that the president is going to try stuff that we have not done in modern times, and he's going to be the guy to figure it out, right? The true diehard, have full faith kind of people. You've got other people who are sort of bracing for the jarring nature of it. It's this threat, and then he kind of backs off. And then if you sort of look big picture, you're like, oh, look, that's how this guy does it, right? Throws the worst case scenario out there, then he sort of backs off. And then, the other side's thinking, okay, well, it's not quite as bad. I mean, it's hard to figure this stuff out, right? That's the psyche part of this that I'm fascinated by people in the industry about how they can handle that, because it has to be so hard to plan. You already deal with weather is something you're just not going to be able to control. So you're used to that, right? And you can't really control what you get for your stuff, right? I mean, not like a lot of not under other industries can. If I've got a restaurant here, I mean, I've got fixed some costs in there, but if I think my chicken's really good, I'm going to make you pay a premium for it. Doesn't quite work that way with beans. You don't quite have that flexibility. So that psychological side to me is also fascinating, how people try to get through this.
Definitely. There's that element to it, Dave, of like how do we manage that? And like you said, I've been kind of on I don't want to say a soapbox per se, but I've been preaching like it would be nice if we could get a little bit of a return to normalcy and some certainty and some stability where we
Hmm.
can. To that very point, like the one thing that we can really the only things you can control, you're controlling, what you're putting down for fertility. You're trying to control those costs the best you can. Weather, you don't have any control over weather, so you're completely at the mercy. I mean, the only other thing that you can really look at is the futures market and try to hedge, right? If
Hmm.
you feel like you've got, and we were guys that I farm with, we were just having this discussion the other day. It's like, hey, we can go out, March of 27 and we can hedge, a certain price. And we know we've got, kind of our inputs covered,
Hmm.
right? So you're trying to do everything you can on a micro farm level to just be I hate the word efficient, but you're trying to be as efficient as you
Yeah,
possibly can
for
with all
sure.
these little micro decisions you're making.
Hmm.
But man, it does make it difficult when, I mean, this is how much, I mean, we're paying attention to this stuff all the time. There was a day, I'm trying to remember, not that long ago, Dave. I got done doing whatever I was doing for the day. It was like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I had, I get my market open, close text messages just in case I don't check the market as it's going through the day. And of course, that day I didn't check either of those texts. And I got a call after market closed at like 4:30, and somebody goes, "Hey, did you see what the market did today?" And I was like, "Yeah, it looks like it finished like up like a couple of cents." They go, "Yeah, it was down like 30 cents at one point." You know, and I think there was another day it was almost up 30.
Uh,
And it's like, oh my gosh, that was that big of a fluctuation today. Like, yeah. So I mean, it's like, my gosh, I mean, having a we can't just sit there and live in front of our computers just
hmm.
watching it every day. And we're not day traders.
Hmm.
We pay attention to it on a daily basis. But I happened to that one day not pay attention. And my goodness, you had that big of a price fluctuation.
Hmm.
And again, I'd have to go back and look at my notes on that. Like, it probably was, a social media post of some sorts or a rumor that China is going to continue to buy, and so that's been a whole new element with this, where a lot of times old school we've been watching WASD reports and government data and planning intentions, and those things obviously move the market. But the new a post comes out, or a ag secretary says something. If you're not on top of that, my goodness, I mean, all of a sudden, I mean, with the way margins are at the moment, Dave, 20 cents, 30 cents can be the difference between it cash flowing and not. So
Sure.
I just, again, any sort of place we can find a little bit of normalcy and stability. And I've said this before, in an industry in which we don't have much of that, would be nice.
So where's your, you came back into the industry.
Yeah.
Where's your hope for the future? Because this is, we go through cycles, obviously, and hopefully this thing busts out here. But this has been a 3-year slog for a lot of people. We are, as you already brought up, the Farm Bill. Congress has messed around with this for several years now and keeps failing to come to an agreement. Maybe this is the year that finally changes. What's the What's sort of the tipping point that provides that extra cushion, that extra margin, so that the sweat level is not as intense as it has been these last several years?
That is a great question. The hope. The hope is like, the family's been farming for, you know, over 100 years, right? So, and my grandfather had to make it through, the family, or my great grandfather had to make it through the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Gramps made it through the Depression too, and then of course Grandpa made it through the farm crisis. Make it through. I mean, that doesn't sound very hopeful. I understand that part of it, but
Yeah.
those are some pretty dire times in
Yeah.
American culture. And you know, Gramps being resilient, again, not a great word, but he was resilient to be able to make it through that. My hope is that from a policy standpoint, that we can get to a point where American family farm agriculture is valued, and we can say, hey, we want this consolidation in agriculture, not just from an industry standpoint, but from farms drying up or continuing to be consolidated.
Mm-hmm.
My hope is that through some of this mess, I guess, that we're in, that we can get to a point with policymakers to say, hey, we value family farm agriculture, and these are some of the things that we need to do in order to have more farmers on the landscape doing different things. One of the things, Dave, I love about agriculture the most is, again, maybe the entrepreneurial spirit in me a little bit here, the ability to innovate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you got your piece of land there, and it's like, hey, let's try to innovate and try to do some things that maybe are a little bit different that can help us on the margins. For example, like we've had up here in the northern part of the state, we've had kind of I guess you could call it a boom of organic agriculture up here, right? And you've seen young families be able to come and actually farm full time because of that. So that kind of gives me hope. It's in a way, I'm full of cliches tonight, Dave. Like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger in a way. Like, and some of these things are self-inflicted, like the trade and whatnot. But some of it is policy driven as well. I think that's what's hard sometimes for us. It's like, oh, these guys are doing everything right and they're still not making it. Well, policymakers, unfortunately, that stuff that's coming out of Des Moines or comes out of Washington, D.C. directly affects us. I mean, my goodness, that's why we're paying attention to the price of number 2 yellow corn and soybeans on the board. And if a tweet happens or somebody says something and that spikes or it drops, that's affecting our bottom line. Right? And if they don't get a farm bill through, well, now we're sitting here. What are we doing with conservation funding? What does it look like with SNAP benefits? That affects people growing fruits and vegetables and those kind of things, food hubs. So it's all integral. That's the other thing. So that kind of full circle around. My hope is people are continuing to be able to innovate, and that we can have a serious discussion in this country about family farm agriculture. And if that's something that people value, that we need to make sure that's put front and center. Because I mean, not just from a national security standpoint, but just from a cultural standpoint, a little bit in the state, right? I mean, I think of my grandfather, and there was a bunch of people that were just like him, right? He was able to farm full time on under 1,000 acres of land and raise livestock, provide for his family, raise 5 kids. Is that something we value? Maybe it's the hope is that being able to ask that question.
That is one thing that I'm hoping that conversations like this, people who are willing to talk about things, will allow this to spread more into the mainstream, right? As if we're going through this decades-long cycle of fewer people actively farming, that then in theory will lessen the people who truly know what's important and what's going on. There's got to be a way to broaden this, and hopefully people sharing their stories will be a way to do that.
I hope so too. I mean, because it's agriculture is a wonderful world to be in. Like I said, what I do sounds really diversified, but everything I do touches ag, right? And it's fun. I really enjoy it because you get to see different parts of the industry, right? From the farm drainage side of things to the farming side of things to the real estate side of things, right? So it's it all works. It all works, but it makes life fun. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Awesome. Hey, we appreciate you doing this. Thanks for the conversation.
Dave, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on.
He is Josh Manske. You can learn more about Josh and his Corn Belt newsletter. You can do that by checking out our newsletter, the American Farm Landowner newsletter. It's the place where landowners get their news. You can check it out now at AmericanFarmlandowner.com. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.